Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhale frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great.
Yes, cannabis. Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Holland, is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical Russ Belville.
Are we there, Russ?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Oh, there we got you now.
Yes. Yeah, here we are, still in Fort Worth, Texas, hanging out at Pete's house from DFWNORML, who's been so kind to put me up here. And it's been really fun for me, too, because Pete worked in the music industry and still does, as a matter of fact. And his office is just covered with pictures of all sorts of great artists. I mean, you got Destiny's Child and Eminem and even my favorite rap group of all time, Digital Underground, Humpty Hump.
Whoop, whoop.
I'm so happy.
Right on, man. Having a good old time out there in Texas.
Yeah, Texas has been really interesting. There was something that Rob Campia said in his presentation that I just wanted to echo. And, he talked about how in presentations and expos and events in California, there's kind of this sense of entitlement. And in Texas, everybody's like deadly serious because the laws suck and everybody's motivated. And, I've felt that in Oregon sometimes too, everybody, it's so good, comparatively speaking.
Yeah. I mean, that, we call it Portland problems, it's like, oh, I've only got hash to smoke. Oh, I got no flowers. It's Portland problems. But, we did fight really hard to get this far, and I'm just glad that other people are willing to start fighting in their areas. So.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. And, we're putting the effing normal tour together, and a lot of things, our motto here at 420 Radio, we're doing it live. We're doing a lot of this tour stuff live too, and we could use your help. So if you check out my Facebook page, facebook.com/radicalruss, I've posted a couple of items from Sean McAllister of DFWNORML, Valenti Funk from the drummer from the FNAs, all sorts of swag giveaways and stuff for donations to the tour. So if you can help out that way and you'd like to get yourself a cool vinyl poster or a t-shirt, there's a few things up there that are available. Check out my Facebook page at facebook.com/radicalruss. I'll try to get a post up on 420 Radio tonight as well so we can all get together on this thing. Also, we're looking for anybody that's got information on a van or a bus of some sort. We've had some mechanical issues and we're trying to find a transport to get us across this country. So if you got some ideas, let me know through our contact page, 420radio.org/contact. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we've got videos. I believe Erik Altieri's up first, Larry Talley second, Cheyanne Weldon third. Stick around. It's highlights of DFW Texas Regional NORML Conference right here on Toker Talk Radio.
It's simply business.
simply business. It's simply business, you know why they won't let us grow. It's simply business.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
It's simply business. It's simply business. It's simply business, you know why they won't let us grow. It's simply business. It's simply business, you know why they won't let us grow. It's simply business.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights, but please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa." Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for getting out early, as Sean said. You know, it's after 2 nights of partying and a full day of conferences, you can see who the dedicated people are that can actually still get out at 9 a.m. in the morning, you know. So, you know, no problem speaking to the real dedicated few here. So I'm just going to really build off of kind of what I discussed yesterday. We have these really important victories. What can we do to keep this momentum up and bring this kind of reform to places like Texas and states across the country? So first, as I kind of mentioned yesterday, we've had an incredible legislative cycle this year when it comes to marijuana law reform bills. I'm just going to touch on a couple of those rather briefly to give you an idea of what's going on around the country. Here on the first page, we see some of the ones that actually have been approved. Colorado passed 2 historic measures for the first time ever. They're the first state to approve regulation of the commercial sale and production of cannabis. And that was because of all the efforts that NORML chapters across the country and marijuana activists have done for the past 40 years. We finally got to this point where the legislature approved it, the governor signed off and says, we are going to have a legal marijuana market for adults. And the importance of that really cannot be overstated. It was quite a historic time, and you know what basically that did, it set up all the regulations and in their proposed tax rates, but in Colorado, tax rates have to be voted on by the citizens, so that will go before voters in the coming elections. Kentucky, of all places, they approved hemp legislation this year, and as we've seen at the federal level, it's really the Kentucky senators and like Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell actually that are really pushing this movement for industrial hemp forward with a new momentum that we haven't seen previously. There's a lot of interest in hemp, and we are seeing bills across the country being introduced to allow farmers to grow it. Maryland approved a medical marijuana-related bill. We don't like to call it necessarily a medical marijuana program, as it's extremely restrictive. It basically, you know, it sets up a very limited program where practicing hospitals would be able to apply and then distribute to patients, but it's a start. Vermont, they have decriminalized marijuana. They're now the 17th state to have decriminalized marijuana possession for adults under an ounce, nothing more than a ticket. And it just shows what kind of, when you have supportive politicians behind you, what you can get done. Governor Shumlin is a very vocal supporter of NORML. He's actually personally, when he got reelected this year, he's personally called the office and says, I want to make marijuana law reform a priority. And when you have friends like that, you really have such strong wind at your back. We had the governor behind us, we had the attorney general of the state behind us, and that went through very smoothly. And Nevada now just approved for dispensaries. They had a medical program, previously didn't have dispensaries. Illinois passed a medical marijuana pilot program. And Oregon just recently expanded their medical marijuana program to include post-traumatic stress disorder, which is incredibly important because at this time when we're seeing more and more restrictive marijuana bills being passed, many states are stripping out this very important ailment that marijuana is really perfect for treating, and it's a huge epidemic that we're going to have on our hands. We have countless troops returning from Afghanistan and Iraq that are really suffering, and to deny them this treatment is unconscionable, and it was great to see Oregon take a step forward in putting that in. Where, unfortunately, on the other hand, New Hampshire, what we had a rather strong medical marijuana bill introduced, and we had really strong legislative support, and then the governor places down her restrictions. No home cultivation, no PTSD. So the Senate kind of buckled and they took them out, and we're still in the process of hashing out those details, but it looks like we're going to follow the trend of legislators being very cautious on this matter and stripping these kind of bills down to very basic bills. As I touched upon yesterday, Maine, we got within 4 votes of passing legalization just on Friday to put it on the referenda for this fall. And actually I have good news because I talked to our sponsor of the bill after I got off stage yesterday, and we are taking this to the Senate floor, and we're still going to fight this out. As soon as Monday, we will have another full floor vote on legalization in Maine. And to have a floor vote, the importance of that really can't be denied. It gives you an opportunity, win or lose. You got your target list of legislators now. Where do they stand? Who's already behind us that we can work to co-sponsor bills in the future, and who do we need to target to work on? And a couple other bills, stand a pretty decent chance of getting approved this year. New Jersey still has a decrim bill that's floating around, and I've heard there may be some momentum behind that before the close of session. And the ones that have been making news a lot this year actually are the 2 New York bills. The one to equalize the penalties for decriminalization. Currently, they have a very schizophrenic law where it's decriminalized if it's in privacy, it's in your pocket, but as soon as that comes into public view, now it's a crime. And that's what, as I'm sure you've all heard, the stop and frisk program, which led to these overabundance of arrests, particularly of people of color in the state of New York. So the governor has been supporting that. Mayor Bloomberg was supporting that. The Commissioner Kelly of the NYPD was supporting that. And that looks like it has some momentum, as well as their medical marijuana bill, which was just approved by the Assembly, and we have about a couple of weeks to get that to the Senate and get that approved. And if we can get New York to approve medical marijuana, the influence of that state with its population and just how the signpost it is for politics would be huge. Having those New York and California, 2 of the most populous states in the country, really get behind these reforms, really put some fire in our belly, and definitely gives us stuff moving forward to really get behind. And just the quick summary: incredible amount of bills, incredible amount. 10 legalization, 20 medical, 12 decrim, 7 federal, and they just keep coming in. So how do we turn this momentum into our victories? Well, first things first is to get involved in your local politics, and I can't stress this enough. A lot of people really kind of overlook how important that your local city council race, your local board of commissioners race, your mayor's race can be. So you really want to get out there and make yourself known. Attend candidate forums and debates. Get your question in there. They take questions from the audience. Sometimes you'll have less people in the room than this, and you can have a really close personal dialogue with your future mayor. And get them on the record on how they feel on this. As long as they think they can avoid answering the question, they will. Politicians, by nature, are an incredibly cautious folk, and they're not going to get out on this unless their constituents push them. So we really need to make sure they come out on it. And we can help them along, provide them educational literature that we all have. Go to norml.org, print some stuff out. Here's some information on cannabis. Start the dialogue. And most of these elected officials are on their ascendancy in politics. Your mayor today is very likely going to be a governor tomorrow, may find themselves in the Senate, maybe they're running for president. If you build these relationships early and we get them on our side, this will pay massive dividends later when they arise to influence. Work with the legislature we already have as well. Make sure your local and state reps know who you are. They're surprisingly accessible when they find out that you're a constituent and you're the one keeping them employed. Make sure set up some office meetings when you're around the Capitol. Make phone calls. Just be in touch. When there's a bill, just ring them and be like, here's what I want you to support this. I live in your district. People that vote for you want this. And you can do things such as Texas NORML has done a great job with. They developed a really informational legislative information packet that they went and they gave out to all the representatives here in Texas. Basic information on cannabis, basic information on the bills. Here's our contact information. And I know people like Cheyanne Weldon, who we'll hear from later, have developed really close working relationships with the legislators. And that is why we got it so far this year in Texas, and we'll get even further next time. And attend these town halls, host lobbying days, keep the pressure on, And as many of you know, NORML has a Take Action Center. If you just go to norml.org, you'll see a big Act button in the right corner of the screen. And you click that, you'll see a list of every single cannabis-related bill that's currently in play at the state level and the federal level. You can click any of them. It's an easy tool. Write a letter in about 5 seconds to your representatives, and they will hear from you. Spread that around online. We've had thousands and thousands of letters generated for each bill through this, and we've had hearings we never thought we would have because of this outpouring of public support. You know, be involved in your community. Make a good face for cannabis consumers. Again, another thing that people down here in Texas have done really well. You hold educational forums where you can, you know, free venues, libraries, schools. They'll often give you space to have a meeting and bring in a good speaker for no charge at all. I know Texas was recently involved in many benefit walks and cancer walks, things of that sort. Do a highway cleanup. Just be out there wearing your NORML shirt proudly and show that you're a productive member of the community. You're not the stereotype we think they are. We're your neighbors, we're your friends, we're your family. And if funding allows, you can. It's surprisingly affordable sometimes to target people in your weekly print papers. Get the message out there, whether there's a bill or an action or just a general meeting coming up. Make yourselves known. And this one, a little bit less so in Texas. You don't have much of an initiative process, but you can always look in to see if your local community allows any sort of non-binding resolutions. Lowest law enforcement priority, as we've seen in some local cities. But again, it always comes down to polling. Politicians need to see the numbers, they need to know the support's there, and they need to hear from you and their constituents. One thing I hear a lot from legislators as I work with them is where we need supportive local professionals. So if you can identify in-state professionals, doctors, economists, nurses, lawyers, law enforcement, who are willing to organize and come out and testify on your bills, sign on to a letter, this becomes incredibly influential. The in-state part is really important. They like to hear from their own people. If you can say, here's a Texas doctor, he's behind medical marijuana, listen to what he has to say. It's surprisingly how you kind of get their ear a little bit more than if just you or I were out there telling them this information. DPA did an effort like this recently. They collected signatures from about 600 plus doctors in New York signing onto a letter stating that they want the option to prescribe medical marijuana. And that kind of splashed actually after Bloomberg made these atrocious comments that calling medical marijuana the biggest hoax in history. So well, thankfully he will be out of office soon, so we can maybe move some more things in New York. We had a similar thing with an economist sign-on letter previously, 300 economists signed on saying they want to legalize marijuana. Not only is that good to show your elected officials that there are professionals supporting this, it's a great media plug. And you use all these to relay into your future legislative support, get these people to testify in person, get them the right testimony. You and these people write letters to the editor of your local papers. It's some of the best free press you can get. You see any article mildly related to marijuana, write a quick letter. They all usually take 250 to 300 words. It's quick, and it's an easy way to get the name out there and the message out there. And also support marijuana PACs. These are things that are coming about more and more. NORML has a PAC where we support cannabis for friendly candidates. And I know MPP has a PAC, and there's a lot of new efforts coming online on the West Coast to support these candidates. If we can get people that support us in office, we get our bills introduced, we get hearings, we get votes. And most importantly, don't feel like you don't have something to offer because maybe you're not an articulate public speaker, you don't know the most about technology. Everyone has something to give in this movement. Whether you're working a table for the group, you're making some phone calls, hosting an event at your house, just folding the t-shirts and helping ship them out, donating art, hand out literature, there is something you can do to help. There's no person that doesn't have anything to contribute to this. And be normal. Don't be ashamed to wear the shirt. As I'm sure many of you know, it's an incredible conversation starter. Whether you're on the bus, you're down at a restaurant, someone's going to come out and talk to you. And if we can have those conversations with people and normalize the behavior, we're winning. And that's why we've seen these polls, as we've seen the graphs countless times yesterday, that we are starting to win amongst most people. Texas won't be last, guys. And if I've seen anything this weekend with the quality of activists here, the dedication and just the energy behind the movement, we will get this done. Together we will legalize marijuana, and we will get our politicians behind us. And if they don't, we'll vote their asses out of office. So thank you for your time. I want to make sure we stick on schedule, but... And thank you all for being involved in Texas. It's been incredibly empowering to see the group come together here over the years, and just this conference is really a sign of where have you come.
Nice little presentation there. You all know what that sound means. It's 420 somewhere. It is here on the West Coast.
Have you ever met that funny
Fire in the bowl if you got it.
reefer man? Have you ever met that funny reefer man? Reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Let him bring in the beat.
Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio, The Russ Belville Show, Ganja John, and Cascadia Concentrates, among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Adam's meticulous designs are individually crafted and screened in vibrant high-definition color. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420radio.org.
Let him bring in the beat.
On the road again.
Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Friends, it's time we legalize the responsible use of marijuana and stop treating marijuana smokers like criminals. We're destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of good, hard-working Americans every year in this country for no good reason. There's absolutely nothing wrong with smoking pot. For more information on how you can help legalize marijuana, please contact NORML at NORML.org.
Still don't get it, do you? Alright, let me make this as clear as I possibly can. This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
We now have some video of Larry Talley at the DFWNORML Con.
Just take a second. I'm trying to get a speech up here without you guys actually seeing the rest of my... I want to get this one slide up here, and I'm going to start off a little bit differently. Hey, good morning. My name's Larry Talley. I'm from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. I'm also the strategist for DFWNORML. First, I want to just point something out, something very important, and that is that our country's wasted $1.5 million arresting, jailing, and killing its citizens with an increasingly militarized police force. We have essentially created a war to force a moral code of injustice on all Americans. The prohibition of marijuana has not only failed in its promises, but actually created additional and disturbing problems throughout our society. Repealing the prohibition of marijuana does not mean we endorse its use. That's important to impart to those people whom you're speaking to. It is a call for wiser law enforcement and public health policy. It's really that simple. Prohibition has given control of marijuana production and distribution to drug cartels and street gangs around the United States and abroad. Now, this promotes disrespect for law, and it reinforces ethnic and generational divides between the public and law enforcement. Now, every year, more than 750,000 Americans are arrested for marijuana possession. That's far more than all those arrested for violent crimes in America. That's important to note. The cost of marijuana prohibition exceeds $12 billion every year, and it is a failing strategy. There's not less marijuana in the Republic of the United States. There's more. There's not less crime. There's more. The cost of government's not smaller. It's vastly greater. And the respect for law has not increased, but it's diminished over the years. Now, we, as Americans, need to urge our leaders to support the passage of legislation to remove the penalties for the possession of marijuana and regulate its use, production, and sale. as is done with other substances such as liquor. Now, the prohibition of marijuana has kept liberty in the dark for many years. We're going to let it out, and we're going to ring the bells of freedom. It's just a matter of time. So I ask you today, is prohibition working? Let me bring this over here to the right, to the left. I ask you today, is prohibition actually working? We all know that it's not. It's a failing strategy. Again, I'm Larry Talley. I'm representing Drug Policy Forum of Texas, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, and the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter of National Organization for the Reformation of Our Marijuana Laws. I retired from the Navy in 2007, and I moved out here to the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. After 21 years working in Naval Intelligence, Naval Special Forces, and serving my country, obviously I didn't use marijuana. I was actually involved in the drug war. I was one of the guys that were storming drug labs in South America. I lived in Central America. I lived in the Republic of Panama for many years where my daughter was born. And I deployed to different parts of Central and South America truly believing that we could cut off the supply and we could make America drug-free by 1995. Boy, I was ignorant. A lot of us were. A lot of us still believe that that's a possibility. We can make America drug-free. Do you guys think we can make America drug-free? Yeah. What happens if you were to just totally eliminate all the drugs in the United States? I mean, the supply of drugs into the United States. People will make drugs. They're going to make stuff. Right. They huff gas. We have a drug problem in this country, and we're attacking a supply. We should be looking at regulation, taxation, and education. Just the 3-tier. That's what's worked with other substances. You know, I mean, in 1985, when I went to high school, I think it was like 42% of this country smoked. So what I think is really, I love that. I love this little analogy. 42% of this country smoked. I worked in Safeway in Borger, Texas, and you know, when I wasn't bagging groceries, I was smoking a cigarette on the way out to deliver those groceries to their car. That's just the way that it was. And some people, well, in Borger, Texas, you could stand in line in the grocery store and smoke a cigarette. Today, it's not like that, is it? It's not like that at all. Now, we've reduced America's addiction to cigarettes. No, I'm not dissing anybody that uses tobacco. It's a free country. God bless you. But what we've done is we've reduced the addiction, and that's the key. We've reduced addiction, and we didn't shoot people to do it. I like the analogy that Russ Belville talked about yesterday. I really like that. It was very enjoyable. Thank you. And he talked about, pretty much alluded to the same thing, that we don't, you don't have Winston and Marlboro shooting at each other in downtown Dallas, and downtown Dallas isn't turning into another Juarez. It's through taxation, regulation, and education. We can do the same thing with drugs, all around drugs. Well, we're here to talk about Texas. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds. I just want to talk a little bit about things that I've done in my career. You know, I was in the Navy for 21 years. While I was in the Navy, I did a lot of really cool stuff. But I also was in some accidents. I was in a helicopter accident, broke my back, injured my back very badly, went through some treatment. And then I went on, because I'm an achiever, I went on to make the U.S. Olympic run team after that. And I got kicked out of this branch of service that I was doing really cool stuff in because they thought I was too broke. So I made the U.S. Olympic run team. I didn't actually get to compete in the Olympics. I was a little old. It was in my 30s. I'm a marathonist. But, you know, I did some really cool stuff. And let me show you some cool pictures. There we go. So I race whippets. I have a whippet service dog. And, you know, Terry Nelson was here. I'd point out that this is the kind of stuff that we did. Flew people into South America, went and did riverine operations trying to cut off the head of the cartels. We actually did. We got rid of the Cali and the Medellin cartels. We did a great job with that. And our goal was to basically cut off the head off of the cartels so that we could end that supply. But what happened was what we knew that was happening. It was that they just got distributed. All that, the big pipelines of cocaine coming to the United States just got farmed out to thousands of little independent groups who then became extremely wealthy overnight. It just exploded. We lost the supply chain, and it got distributed, and then we had more drugs coming into the country. Every time we try to stop it, it just gets worse. This is when I lived in Panama. I'm going to point out here, this is I believe that's a Miraflores locks in the Panama Canal, kind of a pretty place. And if you keep on going to the other side of Panama, there's this area called a free zone. It's a free zone. The government has established this big area in Panama where drugs are kept and money's kept. It's really not designed for that. It's designed for goods and transshipment points. But I'll tell you, as I was being shown this particular area out in the free zone, I had a NIS agent telling me about this much is coke, this much is marijuana, but the biggest collection of trailers over there is just cold hard cash. Cold hard cash. They got more money than they know what to do with, so they store it in trailers. I'm not exaggerating. This is a fact. This is so much unregulated money in the world just sitting in these trailers. It can destabilize economies, right? 7 degrees to Kevin Bacon. I love to play 7 degrees to the drug war, right? Yeah, 7 degrees to the drug war. What ills in our society are, how far affected from the drug war? Our economy, 1 degree. There we go. So let's talk about Texas. This ACLU, I was going to brief you more about stuff that I've done, but I think that this is more appropriate for this particular audience. We're talking about Texas. An ACLU report came out last week. It's very encompassing. I hope and pray that you guys all go read it in its entirety. I've read it twice. I'm probably going to read it 3 or 4 more times. I'll put a copy in my bathroom. It's a great place to read stuff. This report has been a project of the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. The primary authors, he talked to me yesterday. He knows 1 or 2 of these guys that have helped put this together. They did a phenomenal job of aggregating statistics and data to help us show some society's woes regarding cannabis prohibition. So I'm just taking a few elements of this out, just specifically around Texas. So let's talk about the 2 states. This is a scathing report by the ACLU. The 2 states with the most marijuana arrests are New York and Texas. 97% of those arrested were for marijuana possession only. Okay, those are people that are not dealing, they're not growing, huge warehouses full of weed. These are people like you and me that are cannabis users that go home. And we have to deal with the illicit market, and somehow in between us using and getting our weed from the illicit market and going back and forth, we got arrested. 97% are for possession only. It's amazing. Texas had the greatest increase. Texas had the greatest increase in annual marijuana possession arrests between 2001 and 2000. In that 10 years, I got to tell you, I came to DFWNORML in 2007. So for about 5 or 6 years, I just say I wasn't involved with this. And over the last 3, 4, 5 years, I have been, and ever since then, it's still getting worse. It's getting worse and worse and worse. I want you guys to realize this. It's getting better around the country. It's freaking getting worse here in Texas. We have to change this. It's getting worse. Texas is not getting better. It is getting worse. Remember that. It is not getting worse. New York is the only state that's ahead of Texas with 103,000 arrests. Okay, Texas is 74,286 arrests for marijuana. That's total arrests, not including not just the 90% that are possession. So the states that made the highest numbers of arrests for blacks for marijuana possession. I love that slide that you showed yesterday. It was incredible. Thank you. I gotta steal that or make one myself. That was great. The states that made the highest number of arrests for blacks for marijuana possession in 2010 were New York, 40,000. Illinois, 29,000. Florida, Georgia. Let's get down to Texas, 19,000. 164. I say all those numbers because each one represents a person. 19,164. Graphics right out of the ACLU report. Blacks are 2.3 times more likely than whites to be arrested for marijuana possession. It's amazing. And the cost is astronomical. I'll get into more of the cost here in a few moments. Let's talk about the arrests. I really find this reprehensible. Texas arrests, 19,164 were black, 52,893 for whites and everybody else, because we don't separate everybody else. We don't separate Latinos. We don't separate Asians. Whites and everybody else for 72,057 possession arrests in 2010, out of a total of 74,000 some odd arrests. So that's about 2,000 some odd people that were involved in something much greater than just simple possession, right? And the rest were, it's amazing. Texas is addicted to weed incarceration. Take a look at those numbers. 295 people per 100,000 incarcerated for just marijuana possession. I'm going to tell you that the average rate for incarceration over in European states is about 295. For everything. For everything. Okay. For everything. Now we golly, we are. And notice how I spelled marijuana. I spelled it like that because that's how the Texas state legislature spells it in all of the legal documents that we have. M-A-R-I-H-U-A-N. It's not a misspelling. That's how we spell it in Texas. Yep. 126 million are spent on police. 126. I put all the zeros there just so you can see them, because that's your money. That's your money. You live here in Texas. That's your money. We pay high property taxes here in Texas. That's where it goes. 126 million for police, 85 million for courts, 40 million for corrections, for a total of $251 million. I'm going to tell you that's a very conservative low estimate. It's very conservative. Those are the baseline numbers. Baseline numbers. I think if you were to dig a little bit farther, it's probably going to be somewhere around $325 million, in my opinion. We're just going by their numbers right there. So this is the numbers I would talk to my legislator about, $251 million. We have better things to do with that money here in the state of Texas, don't we? Didn't we just fire a whole bunch of people in Dallas School District last year? And we have classrooms with 60 and 75 students per one teacher in Dallas County. You think they could use some of that money? I think they could. We got to change that. That's what I hope to energize you folks here today, because we began in DFWNORML several years ago. Just a couple of us got together and decided that we wanted to make a change here in Texas. And this is the last march that we just had here in Fort Worth. It's the first time we marched in Fort Worth. That's the Fort Worth Convention Center right down the street. I'm going to tell you that you guys can make a change. We can all make a change. I'm going to tell you that while this is such a scathing report, we have hope. And I'll tell you, some of the elements of that hope are, 3 years ago I talked to my Texas state legislature and he told me to get lost. The same Texas legislature, same one, we're talking now. He's liking the idea. He's seeing what's happening abroad, and this is a young Texas Republican, and he's not alone. It's not that they're afraid. It's that they need to be educated, and we need to help them do it. This legislative session is almost over. In 2 more years, there's going to be another one. What are we going to do between now and then? That's the key. We have to get up, and we have to get busy. And it begins here today, so that's why we're going to take prohibition by the horns, and we're going to get busy. After this is over with, please come to a DFWNORML meeting. Please visit our website, dfwnorml.org. Please visit dpft.org. Please visit leap.cc and become a member. If you're not a member, please see me. I've got member pads over there. I'd love to be able to give you a free gift if you become a member. So please join us. Join the fray. You're here today. I'm preaching to the choir. God bless all of you people for coming here today and at least showing some interest and dedicating some time to the reform movement. God bless you for serving your country and making a change. Because we're going to start here in our community. We're going to go to our state. And then we're going to make a change in our whole country. We're going to make a change in our nation. God bless you guys for coming. Thank you very much.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What makes something funny? How does humor impact health and psychological well-being? How can you incorporate humor into everyday life? A concise, reader-friendly introduction to an important but often underappreciated topic in modern psychology, Humor 101 explains the role of comedy, jokes, and wit in the sciences and discusses why they are so important to understand. Psychology professor Dr. Mitch Earlywine draws from his personal experiences in stand-up comedy to focus on how humor can regulate emotion, reduce anxiety, and diffuse tense situations, expose pretensions, build personal relationships, and much more. He irreverently debunks the pseudoscience on the topic of humor and leaves readers not only funnier, but better informed. It's part of the Psych 101 series from Springer Publishing, Humor 101 by Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Ph.D.
Funky roller ring.
Oh, yeah.
What's happening, Groovy Cats? This is your Funk Master of Ceremonies, Big Daddy. And I want you to join me every Thursday night at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, right here at the Funky Roller Ring.
Oh, yeah.
Your home of soul, funk, and disco, baby.
Funky-licious.
There's always a party at the Funky Roller.
Okay. Try not to just trip over these cords here. Thank you guys for coming. I want to thank DFWNORML for giving us this opportunity to all come together in Texas. I think it's great just to see everybody here. Like I said, I know it's your 420 and you're sacrificing that to be here. So I think that shows that we're a little more serious and we're not just about smoking, which is important to those who are not here. And that's what I want to talk to you about. So I hope that you guys will kind of take this into consideration as a different perspective, or a perspective maybe we don't talk about a lot, and a strategy that I hope you'll all join me in, because we do need everyone here. Just as a reminder, for those of us that are from Texas, we do not have ballot initiatives, which is how so many states have been successful. We also cannot change laws on a we cannot change laws on a locality level. Since '97, we have to pass our drug laws on a statewide level. And that was backlash for a group that tried to get a medical marijuana initiative in their town, San Marcos, and the backlash was that now we have to get the whole state of Texas to agree to make any kind of change. So that's huge, and make sure that you let people know that when they say, why aren't we collecting signatures, or why can't we just do what New Orleans or other cities have done and just decriminalize in Austin, because sure, they would do it. We can't, that's why. So just be aware of that, and we have to all work together. So show of hands, if everybody will do this for me. How many people are cannabis consumers? It's a lot of us, right? Wait, keep your hands up if you think we need the support of people who aren't. Right? Okay, that's what we're going to talk about, because they're not here for the most part. They're not here, right? We're only 13% of the population. That's what Keith said yesterday. So who are these other 87%? Who are the people that we know we need to convince? And what is our plan of attack? So I want to kind of just show you how we find these unusual allies, how we outrage the people who aren't being affected, or at least they believe they aren't being directly affected, how we can find them, because that's the biggest problem. How do we find them? So I have a little celebrity example of people we'll all recognize, and then an example that in real life how this happens of a few people you will recognize, and at least one you won't. But basically, Ben Franklin said that nothing is going to change, justice isn't going to be served until the people that are not directly affected are just as outraged as those who are. So that's what we should be working towards. Who's our opposition? We know this guy is, right? Like the people that are outspoken, we know they're out there because they're against us. They're actively working against us and feeding whatever information that they have to people that they claim to be accurate. They're part of that 87%. But certainly they're not the entire 87% of the non-consumers, because the polls are showing us that people are in the majority favoring the changes that we want. So this guy isn't our only target. I understand we have to target him, but that's not the only one. And the unfortunate thing is, targeting this guy and people like this, the law enforcement, the conservatives, the politicians, I didn't want to use them since it's part of their job, but people like that. One of the hard parts in us trying to change their mind is they have preconceived notions. They think that we all look like a certain thing. Everybody that wants to smoke pot, everybody wants pot legal. They have an idea in their head. We know better. We know that that's not everybody that smokes pot is a rapper. You know, we know that. There's some regular looking people. But what do we need to do to convince the opposition, if that is our main or only target, which I don't believe it is, and that's my point. But what do we have to do to convince them? What's our ammunition? Who else do we have other than who they believe to be the only people that want pot? Kind of a small picture, but that's Jennifer Aniston. So, and I don't know what she's smoking. I'm not saying that. But more and more we have the support of people who look a little more like this guy. Maybe he could relate to him. Maybe not. But we do have more support than just what the opposition may think. And more we're seeing that in real life and in celebrities. And that helps, but the opposition isn't maybe going to relate to them. Maybe they're just going to say, well, you're just a criminal too. You're on drugs. I'm not going to relate to you. So it's great that we have more and more people that are standing up, that are saying, I'm a consumer too. I might look like you, but guess what? I don't go home and drink. I go home and smoke a joint. That's great. But we need more of the people that actually don't do that to convince this guy. Somebody else he can relate to on an even different levels. Somebody he doesn't continue to think that is a criminal. And sometimes we have converts too. So part of that 87%, sometimes we get through. This Pat Robertson was an unusual ally. I think everybody was pretty surprised at that. He didn't come out and say, I decided I think marijuana is great. He didn't say I was going to smoke it. Some of our talking points finally got through, or he finally just came to the obvious conclusion that this is a failed policy. So we want more of that, and that's great. Because I think this guy can probably convince this guy a little more. We see the progression of how we're kind of getting a little more relatable to the opposition. But we can't rely on that alone, because who else is out there? Other than these few that we convert, other than the 13% of us, who else makes up the people that we see in these polls that are showing the majority? Who's our target? And I say it's the silent majority. It's the people that say they'll vote for it, but they're not going to help us get it there. They're like, oh, yeah, I'd vote for that, but they don't have a stake in it. They're not cannabis consumers, but they don't care that we are. That doesn't give them a reason to go out and advocate for you, though. So they're who I was. Until I was 35, 5 years ago, I was a drinker. I didn't care what anybody smoked or did. I had plenty of friends who were smokers, but nobody was talking to me about it. Nobody was giving me any understanding of it. I was completely unaware of any issues that surrounded it or any reason that I would have to call my representative or talk to anybody about it. So those are the people that I think, that's the landslide to our tipping point. That's who we have to find. And they're not going to come here unless you specifically, directly target your friend, your family member. We can get a few of those. But for the most part, they're not going to come to our reggae show. They're not going to come to our rally. They're not going to come to our meeting or our conferences. And you know what? It's because of prohibition that we meet like this and we meet in those places. But do we really want to remain a subculture? We're in Time magazine now. It's in Money magazine. It's Forbes. It's in Barron's. This is mainstream. We need to be mainstream. We need to represent ourselves as not just cannabis consumers, but as people who just make a different choice. Find that overlap in your community where you can relate to people on something that has nothing to do with this. And then maybe they'll listen to you a little more. Plan your events by thinking about these things. Who am I attracting? What is our goal? I say we keep NORML's mission in mind. And that's our goal. Our goal is to move public opinion forward sufficiently so that cannabis use by adults is no longer a crime, right? So I try to keep that in my mind when I plan events, when I talk to people, when I represent the movement. Is what I'm doing going to move public opinion forward? Is this a task, an event, a conversation that's going to do that? Granted, we have to have these things to motivate ourselves, obviously. But we need to resonate with this group with something that will resonate with them. We need to argue points that they can take back themselves and have their own reason, just like we had to all find our own reason. Mine was that I switched from drinking, and I'm a much better citizen for it. So, of course, I'm going to advocate for this. That was my personal experience, but everyone can't have one. We may have to give them their reason. And we have all those tools. We have all the information and tools to give them. We just have to come up from the subculture that we're in and take our place in society where we rightfully belong. We don't need to keep segregating ourselves and show that cannabis is just one part of who we are and give them an analogy that they can relate to, a reason that a regulated market would be good for them. So we can talk about, we have all this, we know all this, but take it somewhere else. We can't coerce them or expect them to come to our environment. We want to be a part of theirs. And remember that you don't necessarily have to sell to them that cannabis is good or that it's a miracle or it's a wonder drug. You can sell to them that prohibition is bad. And that's a much more relatable argument to people who aren't consuming. We're not trying to convince them that they should. And frankly, I do believe that we should have the freedom to do it, but I also believe that preaching about why you should have the right to do something is not going to convince someone else to go and fight for your right for it. They're not going to. And I started giving people an analogy. You know, in Austin, there's a nude beach, Hippie Hollow. And I don't care that people go there and get naked, but there are probably some people that go there and get naked who think they should be able to get naked wherever they want. I could even make the argument for them if I really believed it. You know, I mean, everybody has a body. We all know what bodies look like. It's medical, it's science, your parents, your siblings. You know, I should be able to wear or not wear whatever I want. It's my problem if I have nowhere to put my change. That's not your problem. So I could firmly believe that. And I could nod my head and say, yeah, you know, get it on the ballot. I'll vote for it. Sure, I really don't care. But I'm not going to call up my representative. I'm not going to march in the streets naked with them because Frankly, it's not a freedom that I want or I'm interested in. If I want, I'll go to Hippie Hollow. So we have to give them their own reason. So let's think about how this applies in real life. This is my grandmother. She believes in the pharmaceutical industry. She's even suspect of her doctor when he tells her she should take fish oil. So she's not interested. I try to talk to her, and she doesn't want to argue with me, so she won't engage in a very much of a conversation with me. But everybody has a grandmother. A lot of them are opposed. We can't rely on just grandkids to talk to them. So, I mean, why can't we go to bingo and talk to some grandparents? Why can't we have a bingo group that targets them, you know? That's something she does. I know she goes to bingo. That's her addiction. You know, tell me there's not something wrong with you spending your money. But so that's one thing. And she also believes in stereotypes. She believes in pharmaceutical drugs, and she believes in stereotypes. She's from southern Louisiana, and she knows just by looking at people what they're all about. So, and that crosses into things that I don't even want to tell you what comes out of her mouth. But, you know, sometimes you just have to deal with it. So, some of you might recognize this guy, Dave Weinke. He's in the audience. He's a neat, clean-looking guy, right? But he's got dreadlocks. What's my grandma going to think of him? Is he going to convince her that we should legalize marijuana? She's going to, from 10 feet away, as far as she can see without her glasses, she's probably going to say, I know what you're all about, and I know why, and I know what you want to happen, and she's just going to have preconceived notions. Well, Dave is joined here today by a lot of people that maybe my grandma would listen to. Not me, because I'm her granddaughter and I don't know anything, but, you know, he is joined by some people who aren't maybe fitting that category. That's me. You stole my sign, Dave. But, and my idea. No. So, until I was 35, I wasn't a cannabis consumer. I still pretty much look the same, I think. I still have the same kind of job. I still drive the same kind of car. I still do the same kind of stuff, other than I stopped getting drunk and doing a lot of ignorant stuff that put all of you in danger and me. So we're standing next to Dave, but again, if the opposition knows what you're involved with, then they may just put you in that stereotype too. I've never been drug tested. I've never been searched. I've never been arrested. I'm here because I understand the logic of this, and I want other people to also. But other people learn from personal experiences. Have a family member that requires cannabis, and they convert because of that. This is Ann Lee, mother of Richard Lee, founder of Oaksterdam, that was mentioned here moments ago. She's a strong advocate for marijuana legalization. She's also a very unusual ally and somebody that might actually convince my grandmother. You know, she might could talk to her in a different way than I could, or than Dave could, or than anybody that looked like me and did the things that she would find out that we do. So I just think that we need to consider this in our conversations, in our activities, reaching this silent majority that's voting yes on the polls, but not helping us get it there. They're waiting for the rest of us to get it there before they're going to be involved. So how do we reach them when they're not going to our sites to find out? They're not, you know, the soccer mom's not going to walk up to your table covered in pot leaves and say, tell me why I should support this. It's not going to happen. So, but we're not just cannabis consumers, are we? Right? I mean, you guys do other stuff, don't you? I try to do other stuff. I mean, if more people would help me do this, I'd have time. But, you know, I got approached. I got approached by somebody at one of our meetings, and she was there because she's an older lady and she's in a bike club, bicycle club in Austin. And she said, you know, most of our members don't smoke, but I'd love for you to come and talk to our group. Bicycle club, sure, why not? Some of them are going to be smokers, some of them aren't. So I would like to target those groups. Go to your farmer's market, you know, go walk around Town Lake and talk to people wearing a pot shirt. Get yourself out there as somebody that's not a cannabis consumer. You're just an American that smokes pot like a bunch of other ones. So we've still got those people we're trying to target. And how do we do it? We have rallies at the Capitol. That's one reason we hope people will walk by. We hope they'll see us. But are people that aren't already doing this activity going to engage us? I think, like Keith said, now is the time for something more than just the rallies. I mean, the rallies motivate us. They get us going, right? But what is that like? That's like ready, set, go, right? Where are we going? Where are we going when we rally and we motivate? What are we doing? What are we rallying for? It's the same building. Some of the same people, but this is a lobby day. Sometimes we walked by people and they didn't know what we were there for, and they'd engage in a conversation with us. A lot easier to talk to somebody that's not holding a sign and screaming sometimes. Right? You might could learn something. You might could talk to somebody. So I think that's one of the ways that you can do it is just by considering that. Am I open to a conversation with somebody who isn't doing the same activity that I am? Am I willing and able and open to that and putting myself in an environment where that can actually happen? This is one thing that Texas NORML did. We started an athletic group. This is at an Alzheimer's walk. There were over a dozen people probably at that one. This is the end, so some people had taken off. But we had kids, we had our green balloons, we had our sign. We were all wearing shirts that say Team Hope Through Cannabis with a huge pot leaf on it. That got noticed. It gets noticed amongst a bunch of people that are there for Alzheimer's. But we don't do it just in medical runs where we could actually know that cannabis could probably have an effect. We'll do a fun run, things like that are just community related. So in closing, I just want to say that you guys are getting prepared by coming to these conferences, by going to those rallies. That's what they're for. They're preparation. This is not the work. This is the preparation. So then we have to get out there and actually do something. So I want you to not just think about planning your own events and creating an environment that you hope people will hear about and show up. I want you to search for what's going on in your community that you as individuals and you as leaders of groups will want to be involved with and can show that there is overlap between yourself and non-consumers. And then you can have that conversation. You know, join in rather than plan and invite. Let's be part of the whole instead of continuing to segregate ourselves. So I love our choir. I love the people that praise our choir. It's great. But what I would like to see is us sing it from the mountaintops so that everybody else can hear. And by that, I don't mean just yell at people. Go join a group that climbs damn mountains. Get up to the top of it. Show people that you're about more than just pot smoking. And then you build a bond, you build a foundation, you have a conversation, or you create a group that is going into their environment and bringing that message there. And that's going to resonate more. You want to give people something that they can take back to their PTA and say, did you know that we're spending more money on incarcerating people than we are on educating a child? Every single incarceration for a nonviolent crime costs more than what we use to educate one child in Texas every year. That's something that they can take back. It has absolutely nothing to do with your want, need, or desire to smoke. That's what we have to tell people. Find those common interests, participate, and relate to people. I hope.
Well, that was Cheyanne Weldon there, and great presentations there from the DFW NORML Con. Thanks a lot, Russ, for doing what you're doing on the road. We'll hopefully have another show for you tomorrow. We've had a great time. As always, take care of each other, Tokers. Stay tuned tonight for a special 2-hour edition of Red Eyes Reggae Flashback.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it.
Choices Inc.